Hi everybody. A little impromptu live. I'm just gonna wait a minute. I was having a conversation with somebody this afternoon about the book club that I'm doing, and I just want to share with you why we reject the medicine. So the title of this live is "Why Do We Reject the Medicine?" And it's something so many of you are going to be able to relate to that I just wanted to share it. So this is not a plug for the book club. Whether you know it or not, I'm currently doing a book club. And the conversation a little earlier on was with someone in my DMs who said, she was so excited to do the book club. She was looking forward to it. She was excited. She already had the book. She'd already read part of it before. And she said, oh my God, I haven't listened to any of it, right? And here's why this happens. Here's why we go from the excitement, and this isn't just about book club. This is about anything. This is about the programs that you buy and then you don't do them. This is about the gym membership you get and then you don't go. The books you buy and then you don't read. The plans for how you're going to transform your eating and then you don't do it. It's why we reject the medicine across the board. So it's one of two reasons. One, fear of what we'll have to give up, right? So going into anything, there's always, so let's say for example, you're feeling unwell and you make an appointment, say with a naturopath or someone like that, and you already go in going, I'm not giving up dairy. Or I am not, this is a big one for me because this is a non-negotiable, I am not giving up gluten. It ain't happening, right? So there's that element to it. It can be as simple as something like that, but it can also be like, I'm not giving up the victim mind. I'm not giving up my fear. I'm not giving up my barriers, right? It is ego that does this. Now, when I talk about ego, I'm not giving you a free pass. I'm not giving you a get out of jail free card and going, oh, thank God, it's not me, it's ego. It isn't you. It is your ego, but ego is part of you and it's yours to parent. It's yours to master, right? It's yours to evolve, right? But it isn't you. And that's why you can be excited going into something. The you that's excited is actually not the same part of you that then sabotages it or doesn't do it or comes up with excuses. So the reason why it can be confusing is because they're not actually coming from the same part of your mind. So the first part, I said the reason why people reject the medicine, whatever the medicine is. One, fear of what we'll have to give up. And two, fear of the unknown. No matter how bad something is, your ego would rather stay in a known state than an unknown state. Unknown is very frightening, very vulnerable. The ego is extraordinarily vulnerable when you are in new frontier. So I'm sure you can all relate to this. We've all done it. We've been really excited to do something. Yep, this is going to be the change I need. This is the thing I need to add in. This is going to be the key part. And then it comes to doing it and we're like, I'm not going to do it. Why? Because the part of you that's excited and the part of you that then decides not to do it are two different parts. Every kinesiologist will know this. You get a client come to see you that's coming for a physical condition, a bad back, a shoulder, a knee, a whatever. And you are, they will tell you, you are my final hope. I have tried everything else. I've done all the things and you are my final hope. And you do a session on them and it shifts a lot. And you can see the shock in their face, right? Because all the things they've always tried have never included the emotional elements of that pain. And that is why kinesiology is so different and why it's so powerful, right? Because it will combine the physical with the emotional. So you bring that emotional in, they have a really good shift. And then they'll go, my God, that was amazing. They generally will rebook straight away and you will never see them again. And the reason why, or They will have been going to their chiropractor for the last, every month or twice a month for the last 15 years on my knee. You manage to shift it and they won't see you again, but they go back to the chiropractor. The part that wants the pain gone and the part that is connected to that pain, that worries about the unknown of life without that pain, are not the same part of the mind, right? So it is ego that goes, I don't really want this change. And so I've kind of written about that in the book. So the book, if you don't know, is called Set the Tone, Nothing Can Change Until You Do. And I describe it with using an episode of Super Nanny. This is why we reject the medicine. Okay. A good way to understand how your ego will respond to you taking over is to watch a few episodes of Super Nanny. Do you know this American show with the English nanny Jo Frost, who arrives in a black cab at the homes of families who need help with their children? When she arrives, the parents, frazzled and at the end of their tether, breathe a sigh of relief that the Super Nanny's here. Yay, she's going to whip these kids into shape and then the family can live happily ever after, right? It's the same when you go, yes, this program is the final frontier and then I'm going to eat so well, I'm going to have all this energy, or I'm going to read this book and then it's going to change my life, right? The kids, on the other hand, smell change. And kids don't like change. They also feel a sense of impending doom as they can tell as soon as Jo enters the house that she holds a power they have never felt before. Even if it's not a conscious thought, there is a knowing that to the children that this lady ain't no pushover. She's not going to crumble like the parents they have spent years wearing down. The first day always goes something like this. The parents feel like Santa has arrived and they're beaming with joy. The children, unsure and quiet, are assessing the power of their enemy. They can tell by the way this lady talks to their parents, shit is about to get real. Day 2 goes something like this. Having observed the family dynamic the night before, Jo, aka Super Nanny, has now assessed where the parents are hemorrhaging their power and allowing the children to be in charge. She starts to teach the parents how to handle meltdowns, defiance, power battles, etc. This is generally the day of tears. Tears from the children, pleading for this lady to go home and for life to return to normal. The kids often look at Jo with absolute hatred and contempt, having concluded that she is ruining their world. The parents also cry out of frustration and a sense of failure. This Super Nanny seems to expect them to make the changes. She's also saying that somehow they have had a part to play in the children being the way they are. So the parents also look at Jo with contempt. After all, they didn't go on this show to be made to look like idiots. Why is this woman not fixing their children? Day 3. More tears from everyone. Jo sits the parents down, gives them a stern but loving talking to that concludes with words and phrases such as adult, lead by example and be in charge. Day 4. The light is starting to shine. The children are starting to see the benefits of having boundaries, defined rules with consequences, and they start to feel safer. They become more affectionate, especially with Jo, as they start to realise how good it is that this lady has come and helped their home shift from one of chaos and yelling to one of calm and fun. Jo always encourages family activities and games. The parents start to realise that Jo doesn't think that they're incompetent, and they begin to enjoy spending time with the same children that only a week ago had them pouring themselves a glass of wine by 3 p.m. They give Jo a big hug goodbye, and there are more tears as they try and figure out if they could get this woman to live permanently in their home until their children move out. Super Nanny leaves, but the family continues to be filmed. Then, a week later, just before she returns for one last pep talk and a family hug, she watches the footage. She sees some improvement and some behaviours that went right back to what they were before she arrived. In almost every episode of the show, the children behave in their old way when the parents revert to their old way. So this is such an accurate depiction of exactly what happens when you begin to set the tone and your ego becomes aware of the change that comes from the shift in power from it to you. Just as the children don't want to lose the control they have established in their home, your ego does not want to lose the influence it has established in your mind. And just as the parents want a quick fix from an outside source, so do most people when it comes to changing their lives. Many people will give all their power to others if they think they can help them. They project the energy of tell me what to do, help fix me, but there is no fixing required because you are not broken. You do not have a defective mind. You are not weak. What you are most likely doing is handing your power over to an aspect of your mind, just like the children in my example, that doesn't want change. So please know this, without you leading the change, it will never be permanent. So I hope that is helpful to you in understanding why you do sign up for things and you get excited about programs and you want change. There's this part of you, there's this massive part of you that really wants things to be different. But then sometimes when it comes down to it, maybe often when it comes down to it, you reject the medicine because the medicine is scary and the medicine means there's going to be a shift in power. And so that can be, hello, Jai. Hello, everyone. Are there any questions? Like, has that been helpful? Jai, you've come in, you've just missed me talking about Super Nanny, but anyone that was here and listened to it, any comments about that? Does that make it helpful for you to understand why often when it comes to it, you then, it's people are the same with their dogs. I have done just a whole master's degree in skincare in dogs because I had a dog whose skin was so bad and so inflamed with such chronic dermatitis. We went to the vets. We spent probably the equivalent of a holiday house on vets and dermatology vets and this test and that test, and we fed this poor dog for a whole year, nothing but we fed it like kibble. Back in the day when I fed kibble on the advice of a vet, special kibble for sensitive skin, not just any old shit, special shit for sensitive skin. She had nothing but that crossed her mouth for a year. I'm horrified that I did this to this poor dog until I basically started to realize we are spending all this money. She is not getting better. The only time she's better is when she's on cortisone. I healed this dog's skin issues, right? Through her gut and through what we then put onto her skin. And people still to this day, this is many years later, will say to me, oh my God, my dog's skin is so bad. And I'll say, oh, do you want to know how to fix it? And they'll go, yeah. And I'll tell them even just 3 things out of the 4,000 that you need to change. And they're already glazing over and they'll literally say to me, I think I'll just take her back to the vet and get some cortisone cream. And you will be doing the same thing in your life. So what this whole conversation is about, if you've come in late, I'm going to save it. I'll head off in a minute because I don't want it to be too long, is why we often reject the medicine. Why there will be a part of you that wants things different, wants things better, wants to heal, wants to thrive, wants whatever, and yet we will reject the very thing. Or we buy the product, we buy the program, we buy the book, we never read it, we never sit down, we never watch the videos. We can go from being really excited to then not doing it. And the reason why is because the part of you that's excited about change and the part of you that then actually sabotages it is not the same part, okay? That's not to say they're not both parts of you, and that's not to say you're not responsible for both parts, but I would love you to get some relief and to not be too hard on yourself, but to recognize that the only way you're going to create permanent change is by moving out of that ego part of you that goes, I would rather everything stay the same than to maybe be vulnerable, to maybe have to give up my victim mind, to maybe have to give up you know, anything. I mean, people will be attached to anything. And also that part of your mind that is very, very frightened about the unknown, right? And would rather have all of the past just repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. It is stuck on repeat because it feels safer in that. And have a listen back. I read out a part of the book that kind of explains to you exactly what's going on. When you start to make changes and when you go, right, I'm going to be in charge, meaning like, as I'm always saying, be the adult in the room. When you start being the adult in the room, your ego is going to go, oh, I don't like this. It doesn't want the transfer of power, right? It's too frightening. It's like, no, I have to hold on to that. Just like the child that goes, I don't want any change. So we were spending heaps of money on our dog's eye and then changed to calendula tea in her eyes twice daily. Now she's fine. Yep. Calendula is brilliant. Calendula tea, calendula cream, calendula anything. Fantastic for any kind of rashes or raised skin, like in the short term. I mean, if a dog does have like chronic skin conditions, that is gut. Kibble is toxic shit. But even, you know, and then I'll say to them, like, do not worm, do not flea. They are poison. And they'll go, oh, but what if, yeah, cool, do whatever you want to do. Yes, it all makes sense. I can recognize this happening in myself and others. Brilliant. I can completely relate to this. We can all relate to it. This is the thing. We can all relate to it. Every human mind has the part that wants to thrive, wants to evolve, wants to grow, wants to change, the part that gets excited and goes, oh, I just signed up for a program, or I just signed up to whatever, or I just bought this book, it's going to be so good. And then it's sitting on your bedside table and you're like, because we all also have the part of us that goes, and it won't necessarily be conscious, but there will be that thing of like, I don't really want to read that book. And often when your ego knows that it is actually the very thing, it is the medicine, it will reject it the most. Those two things will go hand in hand. Definitely always look at what you're drawn to, but also always look at what you reject, because there'll be something like reject, not just like, yeah, no, that's not my cup of tea, or I'm not really drawn to that, or that doesn't resonate. Reject, or fear, or put off. There'll be something in that. Especially when I talk about owning your health to others. Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the biggest things that people fear is being able to get rid of victim mentality. Because most adults are not grown. They are not grown. I'm not even going to say most adults are children, because I think we really need to stop seeing children as unevolved, because they are not that. When they come in, we do that to them, right? That is the programming, that is the matrix. We actually what's it called? De-evolve? What's the word? We actually do that to them, right? We dumb them down. We take their intuition and go, no, override that. We take their feelings and go, no, you can't be feeling those. We take their knowing and they're in alignment. I don't want to talk to that lady. Well, you're going to. I don't want to hug that person. Well, you are going to. I don't want to go to school. Well, you are going to. And we then they just end up in grown-up bodies, but they are not grown up because they've not been reconnected with that. And their ego that whole entire time is just like buzzing and growing and getting stronger and stronger and going, I will protect you. I will protect you. And so when there's any hint of that ego losing its power, kind of being the door bitch, right? And you taking over and going, no, you come, I'm going to take it from here. It freaks out and does not want you. There's part of you that does not want full responsibility. There's a part of you that wants to stay a victim, because when you can stay a victim, then you can stay in the hope and in the belief that it's someone else's fault, but also that someone else will come and save you and that someone else will change things for you. So there is so much comfort in being a victim that the vast, vast majority of people will actually fight you on and to hold on to it. They will fight you to hold on to it. Is procrastination the same thing? So procrastination, you have to ask, do I actually want to do that, right? Procrastination could be one of two things. The only way you're going to know which one it is by knowing, do I actually want to do that, right? Because what if you're procrastinating doing the thing you don't want to do because you don't want to do the thing, right? So then actually putting it off can be like, this is actually me in my power, right? This is actually me aligned with who I am, but I hold a belief that I have to do it, or I hold a belief that, other people will be upset if I don't do this thing. So you would have to check in and say, well, do I actually want to do the thing? If you really want to do the thing and yet you're still putting it off, then this whole video is for you. Because then this is exactly what I'm talking about, where you want to do the thing, you're drawn to it, your heart desires it, you feel like it will be beneficial, and you put it off, then that is the ego going, I do not want change. I am worried and concerned what this is going to bring into my life, right? I mean, I'm so good at hearing the key change when I'm talking to someone's ego especially in a session, because it's a completely different tone, right? And I'm not talking about they sound different, but it's a completely different tone. It's all about buts, and it's all about how, and it's all about detail, and it's all about, being stuck. And you can hear this is not them anymore. I'm not talking to them anymore. And you get glimpses of them, and mainly ego often at the start when you're working with people. We work with people for longer, you get them all the time, and then when you get glimpses of ego, they actually stop themselves and they go, oh my God, listen to that. So they will actually pick up on it themselves, right? And then this is the beauty, because it's not ever about beating it into submission. It's not ever about wanting to get rid of it. It is part of your guidance system. If you didn't need it, you wouldn't have it, right? There are no errors. There are no errors in the human body, and there are no errors in the human mind. If you were not meant to have an ego, you would not have one. And so it's about learning to be the adult in the room, and to be able to say to it, to hold space for ego, and to be able to say to it, I am going to take it from here. And really, that is what my book is about. It is a guide that teaches you how to be the adult in the room, how to recognize ego, how to put in a pause to choose differently, how to make different choices and why you're making different choices, and then how to use ego as part of your guidance system, right? Whereas most of us, the vast majority, ego just runs the show, and we think it is us. Of course we think it's us. It's in our voice. It's been with us all our lives. We've heard it. We're talking to it all our lives. And you can think, so the reason why that's actually a really good question, is procrastination the same thing as what I'm talking about? You're only going to know the difference. A lot of people think that their ego is intuition. They don't think their ego is intuition, but they hear the self-talk and they think, is that intuition? Again, you're not going to know the difference until you actually look beneath it. Go, what do I actually want? What is my intention here, right? How does this make me feel? How does talking to myself like this make me feel, to know the difference between wisdom and ego? The hardest thing I ever did was see that I was a victim. I used to think that people that said this had an easy ride in life and didn't understand me. No, I was a victim and now I'm free. Yeah, Jai, I'm exactly the same. So born from birth, right, born into a group of hardcore victims. Hardcore. They were my training ground. Perfect, every one of them. Mother, father, aunties, uncles, cousins, hardcore victims. Okay. And if you're a family member and you're watching this, not like you were all on a scale for sure. Like some certainly nowhere near as much as others, but we all know which ones were the hardcore, right? Because they're still in it. And I thought, look at those victims, right? And it would have been so easy for me because I grew up in domestic violence. It was so easy to go, well, clearly dad is the bad guy, mum is the good guy. Dad is the perpetrator, mum is the victim. This was not the case, right? And I'm so glad that I always saw them both being toxic in different ways. I saw her lack of self-esteem play out this way. I saw his lack of self-esteem play out this way, right? And it was perfect, like stomping ground for knowing this is what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to remind people of their power. Perfect. However, I constantly forgot about my own and did not realize. Like you, Jai, I was like, well, I'm not a victim. And if you would have told me at the time, I would have been like, but I was massively, right? So I could see it in other people, but I couldn't see it in myself. And that is always the final frontier with any work that we do. It's always easier to see it in other people than to see it in ourselves. But I hugely felt a victim. I did not know how to be in my power. I did not know how to get people to treat me well. I did not, even when I was the go-to person that people would go to help them, and they go, oh my God, so good, and yeah, so all this stuff. I was not feeling that way at all. And that is that is in like the introduction really tells you like, and that was like certainly, it was like one of my lowest points for sure. But I mean, you know, I could feel like an encyclopedia with like situations where I like did not feel in my power. And the work I started to do is literally like what fills these pages. Because there is a way to move out of that. And it is definitely not by like bagging yourself or judging yourself or going, you know, don't be stupid. Of course you've got power. It's none of that. It is a process. And the first key part of moving out of victimhood permanently, and that doesn't mean you won't skip into it and occasionally forget your power, because human on the planet, but to actually permanent change requires that you recognize the part of you that is the victim mind, that is the victim mentality, and that is ego, right? And until you can recognize that I am not that, because I can move in and out of it. I'm not in it all the time. Therefore, I am not that, right? And if I can sometimes be in it and sometimes be out of it, then I am actually above both of those things. I am actually neither one of those things. I am something greater, and I get to choose, which is actually what we're focusing on this week in Book Club in week 2, which by the way is free if you want to go check it out. But that's what we're focusing on this week, is the conscious choice. And so I had to start this process of consciously choosing to come out of it, to leave victim mentality behind. But ego is not going to leave victim mentality behind. You will leave victim mentality behind when you're able to move out of your ego. And you're able to understand that ego just is a victim. It is not evolved enough to evolve beyond that. You have to be evolved enough, and then you can start to use it as a guide. Like the example that I use in this week's video is that you can start to see ego like the strips on the side of the road, on the side of the highway, that when you veer out of your lane and they kind of, you know, they're bumpy and they make that noise, you can start to see ego like that, to go, oh, I just forgot myself. And that is what happens when I've been working with people for a while, is that then when ego comes in, they'll go, oh, you know, they recognize it like, oh shit, I just veered off who I am. I just forgot who I am, right? I think there is heaps of damage when adults say how a child should or could react to a childhood trauma. Also, absolutely. This plants a seed of rebellion and a path of self-destruction. Because what happens is adults who have had childhood trauma and have not dealt with it then have children, and the cycle continues. And someone that cannot hold space for themselves cannot hold space for you. Someone that cannot regard their own emotions cannot regard yours. They might be able to a certain degree, like when you're a baby, but as you become a child, it becomes more confronting to them. You start to feel more needy to them. You can also trigger, often the parent that will most be triggered by your emotions is the one who sees themselves in you. I mean, it's a whole thing. You could do a whole quite a lengthy, meaty conversation about this, you know, about the sensitive boy who is not allowed to explore that part of themselves and who has to kind of lock away and hide away their fear or their anger or their emotions, then often will become a father who then will be really triggered by a sensitive little boy, but also it can trigger their ego usually very unconsciously. They won't be consciously thinking this, into thinking that boy is not safe. That boy needs to toughen up. That boy needs to harden up because that boy is not safe in this world, because they were the child that didn't feel safe to be sensitive, right? And so then they'll reject that, and they can get like really bully that in their own son. Mothers will do the same thing, you know, and it's usually the child that feels most like themselves, and it's usually all unconscious. Yeah, all right. Well, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments and responses. I hope this is helpful. This is called Why Do We Reject the Medicine? If you've just joined in, I'm going to hop off now. I'm going to save it. I don't want it to be too long. Go back and have a listen why we do that and what part it is. And I hope this whole conversation and discussion is helpful to you. And if you do want to join book club, you can just have a look. Yeah, you're welcome, Jai. We could have maybe we'll have get on and have a really good conversation one day, because I love your questions. You're welcome, Rita. Thank you, Jai. Hey, Georgina. I hope this is helpful, and please know this applies to all of us. It applies to all of us, because the thing that ego does, right? The thing that it does, I always know when somebody is very much in their ego. When they feel, hey Jane, I'm glad you're here. When they feel very alone, when they're worried and they feel shame about things and they don't want other people finding out, that is when you know, if this is you, right? If you look at the world and you think, oh, other people have got it pretty sorted, I reckon they're doing all right. Or you're going to a social event and you feel like, oh, other people just know how to have conversations and they just know how to be, and it just flows for them and it doesn't for me. Or, you know, you're a kid and you're going to school and you're feeling like, no, everyone else is all right, everyone else gets it, but I don't, right? If this is you in relationships, if this is you in any part of your life, or maybe every part of your life, please know this is your ego trying to convince you, because that's how it feels, trying to convince you that you are different and you're separate and you're not like the others, right? If you have a feeling of like, I'm not like other people, but you don't, not in a good way, like not in a celebratory way, not like in a like, I'm not like other people, I am uniquely me, or I'm not like other people in that way, this is how I like, if, you know, more of a like, they've kind of got it sorted and I haven't, that's your ego. Because that is how your ego feels, and your ego hijacks your mind and hijacks your experience and tries to convince you in this, because it tries to stay separate, because ego has all this shame and it has all this judgment around all of that, and it just wants to rain on your parade. So if that's how you feel next time you go out, please know most of the people there feel uncomfortable at the start. many people there feel like they might not know what to say or who to talk to, or they feel uncomfortable, or what do I do with my hands, or oh my God, I have to go to the toilet and walk across the room and everybody's going to watch me walk and now I can't walk like a normal person. Everybody goes through that, right? That is literally every mind on the planet. You will not have had a unique thought. You will not have a unique fear, right? And so just like take heart in the fact that everybody's got an ego, and everybody's ego is trying to fuck them over. Everybody's ego is trying to tell them that they're not good enough, that they're not this enough and that enough and that enough, right? And I'm not the only one. And so make it your kind of like, this is why I want us to be on a journey of mastery, right? Where it's time, right? It's time. Enough fucking about. It's just time. We don't need to get rid of ego. We don't need to throw it away. We don't need to belittle it. We don't need to argue with it. We don't need to suppress it. We can just see it as the least evolved part of ourselves, crying out for love, crying out to be accepted, crying out to be whatever, and you can be that thing for it. Because when you are not that for your own ego, your ego will go looking for it in other places and spaces and get into all sorts of drama and chaos and toxicity. Your ego is the one that left you out of the email about needing to wear blue on Wednesday and you rocked up in normal clothes. That's right. That is exactly what your ego did. And then it says to you, oh, see, you should have known. Like, just know, please know. And if you're nervous about something, okay, if you've got something coming up this week and you're nervous about it, here's what I always do, and it always helps me. I look for the person in the scenario that would be even more nervous, where I think, wow, if I had to do that, I would be way more nervous, right? Because you'll always find someone. You'll always find someone. So, the first time I got married, I had like a wedding, right? Second time I got married, I did not have a wedding. But the first time I got married, I had a wedding. And you know, like you're the bride. There's a reasonable amount of pressure on you. There's a lot of eyes. There's a lot of eyes when you walk into that church, right? And so, of course, I was nervous. But in the whole lead up, I kept thinking, there is a lady there today who is going to sing. She's going to stand up and sing in front of that whole congregation. She's going to sing in front of all those people. Imagine having to sing in front of all those people. And suddenly, me just simply walking down an aisle just felt so much less nerve-wracking. So just look for the person who is doing something that you would feel would be even more nerve-wracking or more challenging or whatever than the thing that you have to do this week, any time you're going to something like that. And remind yourself, everybody feels the same stuff, right? The stuff might be packaged in slightly different ways, but you scratch just below that and everybody is going through the exact same thing. The only way to make it different is your response in your own mind and learning how to hold space for yourself. Is literally the only thing that's going to make it different. All right. It's 7:15. I don't even know when I hopped on. I think like about 45 minutes ago. So I'm going to hop off, save it so it's not too long. Of course, the other thing why people don't listen to stuff is because they have very minuscule attention spans due to social media and due to current, shit fuckery. All right. Have a great night. Let me know if you're watching the replay. Is this helpful? And just do the thing that excites you and don't let that ego get in the way. Start to take the medicine. Start with a small dose. Start to take the medicine and know that the medicine can take a while to kick in. And sometimes you have to take a little bit of it without a lot of effect just to kind of get that happening, and then just choose the medicine. Tallow Now knows all about my own choosing the medicine. Such a good metaphor right now. Choose the medicine. All right, my loves. Much love.